So this is my whistle-stop tour of Doctor Who Season 1, technically, which is very confusing. But I could have done it episode by episode as I went, like I've done before with stuff, but I find that too stressful, and it's just not something that I was going to do. So it's going to be this overview. I originally also wasn't going to include the church on Ruby Road because it's a Christmas special. I'm not going to include the specials at all. They don't count. It's from the church on Ruby Road, really. But obviously, yeah, that does give us Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. It gives us so much of her story. So I need to talk about it. Also, I'm aware, new Doctor, new old showrunner. There's always going to be changes, and obviously the Disney Plus involvement now. So we've got to look at it on its own merits, but I do want to make sure that, we don't ignore the fact that this is part of a grander thing, both with New Who and Classic Who from before 2000. So, all that said, let's talk about the church on Ruby Road. So like I say, I wasn't originally going to include this. I didn't think it was part of it, but because it's so intrinsic, and particularly later on, towards the end of the season, we are going to need to have this in our minds. So, I thought it was a bit child-focused, with the goblins and all that. It's very kind of, well, The Hobbit as well, but let's not talk about that more than we have to. But there's this whole pivot over the years. Doctor Who was originally thought of as a kids' show, but over the years it's become a family show. This felt like a big step back, and I say a step, more of a jump back, to that kind of very childlike element of it. However, it gave us Millie and Ncuti having a really fun time. So from it needs to happen to set up things and to give us a first adventure, to give us a grounding, it's fine. Not my favourite by any stretch, but it's okay. However, Space Babies, it's the first proper one, and I do think it's probably the weakest of this entire run. I did not that I didn't enjoy it, but I don't think it did anything amazing. And again, it leaned into that childish element of a literal bogeyman, because we don't call them boogers over here, our friends in the States, we call them bogies. So the bogeyman makes sense. Your boogeyman, what does he do, dance? But that's a whole other issue. Anyway, so the bogeyman being literal bogies, it's, like I say, very childish. However, again, it's that finding feet, it's the first few, and I think maybe they'd done all of these, maybe they wanted originally to do them in a different order, but they realised that this is probably the weakest one. So we'll just put that out there. We're not going to completely ignore it. We still want to do the idea, but we'll just put it out there. Hopefully people don't hate us too much. Then we ramp up. The Devil's Chord is where it goes, okay, no, it's not a child show. This is not a kids show. This is a family show. We're going to put some heavier stuff here, and Jinx Monsoon does not just chew scenery. She absolutely sits down, knife and fork, silver plate, everything, like all the sauces on the table, and just goes to town. She made this what it is. Now, was there some overacting? Was there some extremely exaggerated moments? Yes, but I think that's by design. This is a god of music who, in fact, wants to stop all music so that they're fully in control of it. They take the inspiration, they take all of this stuff that people have in them as creators and just draw it out of them to feed. So that music in this time, even though we know that this was a big boom in British music, is just, I've got a dog, his name's Fred. I love the idea of having a Beatles-esque song that's absolutely stupid. Murray Gold, and I briefly want to quickly side by here, Murray Gold coming back is one of the best things, because in Space Babies, or was it Church on Ruby Road, I cannot remember, there's a little This Is Gallifrey reprise, because that's his. They can use that, and it's beautiful. I don't know if they could use it before, when he wasn't involved, but they definitely can now, because it's his. He can write it in. And yeah, there's a lot of leitmotifs that come back. But anyway, yeah, so the Devil's Chord, it just hit so much, and it brought back that dread. We had Neil Patrick Harris saying, there's more of us, the one who waits, all that kind of stuff laid as he was being folded. And so now we're seeing those other gods and monsters that have been released upon the worlds. And like I say, it was such a fun episode. And again, there are issues. There's always a twist at the end. That song just, it was a bit of an earworm for a few days, but it was annoying after a short while. I'm the kind of person who constantly repeats little bits of songs, and I haven't done it for that. So yeah, it's the down part of the episode, unfortunately, because it did just go on too long. They could have just done a little, half of that or something. Something as a little nod, but a full-on musical number at the end just felt a little... The tone shifted to too light, from having someone who really was a big threat. But then we come into Boom, which I think is one of the top episodes of this run. It's among the top 3, definitely. Because this is when it went, okay, Stephen Moffat is back, and you can tell. We have Anglican Marines, a staple. We have the new companion coming in next season, subtly dropped in there. No one knew this was happening, or very few people knew this was happening. And all of a sudden we're like, wait, weren't you in casting stuff for next year? So the fact that we've got this person already in there is beautiful. It's very much in the Doctor Who tradition. Have someone who's going to appear later on. Because we don't know, I think, at this point, at least from what I've seen, whether she will be playing the same character. But Boom is one of those where it's very much, this is the Doctor in crisis. This is the Doctor at a disadvantage. How does he react to that? How does he make sure that his companions are, or his companion is able to help him out of this? And, he needs to be clear, concise, to make sure that he doesn't get blown into smithereens and destroy much more than what they're expecting, because of the fact that he is, this different kind of being. A Time Lord is not just a normal human at all. And it's so well done, so tense. But then, of course, we have the disgusting John Vader thing, and I don't want to think about that longer than I have to. I will say this is where we start to see them seeing Susan Twist, because that was the whole thing. Susan Twist is the actress who played Susan Triad, in case you weren't aware. Susan Twist. It's... casting is genius. Apparently Russell said it wasn't by design. She was just the best person for the role, and it was like, this is delicious. I wouldn't put it past him, though. But she appeared in the specials. She's appeared in every episode in some role, and this is the one where she's definitely seen by both of them. And it really starts this pull, or this push, towards a recognition. Because when we get into the next episode, 73 Yards, a Dr. Light episode, which I agree with a lot of people on this, the lack of a title sequence felt very uncomfortable. It's a key part. I mean, you can have a cold open and then the intro, fine. But having nothing just really makes it unsettling. However, contextually, it kind of works. It's one of those where I don't like it, but I understand why it might have been chosen. But yeah, Millie Gibson had to step up and just run an entire show pretty much on her own. And if the last 3, 4 if you count Church of Ruby Road episodes have not convinced you that she's good, this will. I've watched the Unleashed afterwards, and, for all of these. And when I found out she's just 18, when they were filming, I was like, this is amazing. This is so good for someone that young to be able to portray this range of emotions convincingly. And to stand up against the energy of Ncuti Gatwa, to stand up against Jinx Monsoon. She's there amidst these big, bombastic characters and holds her own. It's beautiful to see. And like I say, she holds this one. Now, I did also watch The Unleashed for this, and the whole what she's actually saying and the emotions, kind of underwhelming. I preferred the mystery, and Russell will apparently go to his grave knowing what is actually technically being said to cause all these people to run away, but he will never release it to anyone. He will keep that secret for the entirety of his life. Because what would make someone's own adoptive mother just run away from her in fear? But I knew that 73 Yards was going to be important in some way, and I do love the fact that they brought it back towards the end, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Like I say, this is a great episode, and I think really showcased Millie, and her capability to be the companion. So then we move on to a controversial episode by every metric. Dot and Bubble. Now, I can only speak, obviously, from a place of my own cultural and ethnic background. But I thought that this was one of those episodes that just, if you rewatch it, you suddenly go, how did I not see it? I've watched clips of it, through Unleashed and things like that afterwards, and I've gone, how did I not see this really, really obvious hint? Like when she's talking to the Doctor, when Lindy's kind of saying like, oh, I don't want to talk to you, blocks him and all that, she's always nicer to Ruby. Now, perhaps you might argue misogyny, fine, but she talks to a lot of her white male friends, fine as well. The fact, and this came from Who Culture, who are amazing at this stuff. If you don't already know them, go and, you like this stuff, obviously go and give their stuff a watch, they're amazing. But they pointed out in a video that the Doctor is wearing orange and Lindy's wearing blue, which are opposing colours. It's why they're on a lot of posters, because the contrast draws your eye. So even this clash between them is very heavily, put out there. It's amazing that they put so much in there that a lot of us completely missed. This is messaging done very well. A lot of the other episodes have been quite heavy-handed with it, I would argue. But this one, you don't even notice it, and all of a sudden at the end she's like, oh no, like, it's fine, we'll go on around, don't want to be contaminated by you. And even at that point I was like, oh, what's wrong with him? Because I am not an awful racist. It's not that I don't see colour, because that's also harmful, but I take Ncuti as a Rwandan Scottish actor on his own merits. I take Millie as a white British actor on her own merits. I use actor because it's a gender neutral term. I don't like actress. It makes it feel less to me. So everyone's an actor. But still, yeah. I see these people for who they are, but I don't see it as, a thing to go, oh, you're different, and that's bad. I celebrate the difference. But the fact that these people are all white and young, and yeah, it's one of those that sat with me for a few days afterwards. I needed time to process. But then, 1 week later, we got what was apparently one of their favourite ones to work on, because everyone likes dressing up in period costumes like they did in Rogue. So this is one of those where you can tell that everyone is enjoying themselves in the role here. Indira Varma comes back once again. We had her as Susie for, in Torchwood as one big role that we know her in this universe. But she's clearly relishing every moment, even though she's had to sit through hours of makeup to be a bird person. It takes much less time to take it off, of course, but yeah, you've got to have an interest and a love of what you're doing to sit there, to have all this stuff put on your face that might impede your ability to see properly or hear properly, or even be super hot. But she's willing to do it. She's having an absolute blast with it, you can tell. And Jonathan Groff is so likeable as someone who is basically a bit of a nerd who's putting on a front. We all know people like that. Many of us have probably been people like that before we realise that it doesn't matter. And the fact is, this is someone who's lost someone. Yes, that might be affecting it. He's not really thinking, of himself in a good way. He's not looking after himself properly. But he has this spark, this relationship with the Doctor. And I know a lot of people probably have a problem with it because it's humanising the Doctor again. This is what Russell does. But at the end of the day, we approach the world from a human perspective. It's the only way we can interpret things. It's the only way we can write things from a human perspective. So making the Doctor a little more human, I don't feel is the worst thing in the world. Maybe dial it down a bit, yes, but it's not inherently awful. But his interactions with Rogue and their relationship that builds, towards the end of like, right, you want to rescue your friend. I want these captured. The only way that this is going to work is if I sacrifice myself and say, come find me. And this also opens the door for Jonathan Groff to come back somehow. If the Doctor can find a way to go and collect him from wherever he is, to save him, this can be something. We could have a future companion in Jonathan Groff, which is amazing to think about. This is what the Disney Plus money brings us. It's that prestige, it's that ability to get actors of this caliber. Yes, we had Neil in The Giggle, but still, this could be a very big recurring role if everyone's willing and able to do it. And I love this piece. The one thing I didn't like was the Susan Twist bit, because that painting looked fake as hell. But speaking of Susan Twist, we finally get the beginnings of the reveal of what's going on in The Legend of Ruby Sunday. And boy, this just suddenly turned everything around. The fact that Susan Twist herself, as an actor, had to get into so many different bits of makeup just for tiny, tiny bits. Like all the stuff, was shown as the cyborg thing and the weird demonic-looking thing, or the White Walker-looking thing almost, I suppose you'd say. All of these things are literally like for tiny bits. She's had to get in all of that for 30 seconds of screen time for that particular version. But it's nice that she finally gets, a big role. I mean, she had it to a degree in 73 Yards as the hiker, but she gets to speak, she gets to actually be a full realised character here. And then we have the sudden reveal. We were all expecting, everyone theorised because, Susan Triad, now S Triad, it's TARDIS. And I love the fact that in unit, they were all like, yeah, we know. And I love Lenny Rush. I wasn't familiar with him. Apparently he was cast for Space Babies as the voice of the captain, the main, or not the captain, sorry, the main baby, the venturous one. I've forgotten his name, the brave one who goes to fight them. He was going to be the voice, but then they're like, Lenny's too good, we need him on screen. And we started watching Am I Being Unreasonable, which is kind of what he's known for, mostly in this country. And yeah, he's great. I just want to see more from this guy. He's amazing. He's got the same condition as Warwick Davis. If he makes you think of Warwick Davis, that's why. But he could be our new one. Like, he's great, and he's so fun. He enjoys himself, and I'm glad that we saw him in this role. He's great in there. And like I say, anyway, in unit, they're all like, yeah, we got it. It's TARDIS. It's an anagram. It's obviously, a call to you. And technically, the TARDIS does factor in, but it's not in the way you think. Now, I watched some of Sylvester McCoy's era when I was a kid. That's when I was growing up. It was towards the end of his run, really, that I can remember. And I've rarely seen much of the older stuff because there's a lot of it out there, for one. And it's only really after 2005 that I felt the need. Because it's like, it's coming back, maybe I should watch a few. And I did try, I started and I just gave up. But they cleverly did a Tales of the TARDIS, which we've still got to watch the others of. But they did one in the interim between The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death to just summarise Pyramid of Mars, because that's where Sutekh comes from. That's his original story under Tom Baker, with the sadly passed Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith as the companion. So we actually watched that before watching Empire of Death to get that backstory. So now I understand Sutekh and the fact that it's this terrifying thing. Like, the reason that at the end of The Legend of Ruby Sunday, he looks so aghast and, like I say, terrified of it. I now understand. This is someone who the only thing he could think to do was to banish them to the time vortex. And somehow he's come back. He clung onto the TARDIS to just grow and travel with the Doctor, and this is how he's been seeding Susan throughout the universe. And we find that, through this two-part. I'm kind of talking about The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death almost in one, because they are two parts of the same longer story. But we have this whole thing, this realization that yes, he's never actually gone, and he's been there constantly, feeding off the energy and growing and becoming this titanic form. And this is where I have some problems, unfortunately. I mean, if we quickly sidebar to the Tales of the TARDIS episode, they did spruce up some of the visuals. I think they slightly upscaled it in general, but the Time Vortex was the new style, and it really stood out. It wasn't the old style as it used to be, with just basically... It was like a kaleidoscope effect on a bunch of LEDs in a circle or something, but it fit the time. It just felt very weird. I get why they did it, but I didn't agree with it. But either way, I think, I'm totally fine with that. He clung on, this is how it's worked. Great. But the ending of Empire of Death just felt underwhelming to me. How do you what happens if you bring death to death? You get life. Double negatives work in vocabulary. Not necessarily in that. It's like the idea of you fight fire with fire. No, if you put more fire on fire, you just get more fire. You don't get no fire. You get more fire. You have to put water. You have to put its opposite. I don't know if fire with fire is more about gunfire, but shush. The analogy works, okay? But that's it. It's just... The double negative idea of it just... I didn't like it. It's very Russell in some ways. I think sometimes he writes himself into corners. I love most of his stuff. I'm not saying I hate him or anything like that, but He writes himself into corners and goes, I have no idea how to get out of it. It was love. That's very much his thing. He's very much a love story guy, clearly. And that's fine. Like I say, I enjoyed most of his stuff. But I think it just felt very convenient. It was very much like, oh, well, we'll just kill death, because if you kill death, then you get life. That's fine. Like, everyone coming back to life. You know, it's like, yeah. I just, yeah. There's so much that I didn't appreciate about that ending. However, it did give us a nice wrap on the ongoing story of Ruby, because over these 2 episodes, you know, they've gone into this sort of memory chamber, this time window, and trying to see who her mum was, because there's been this constant thing following around. And, you know, she turns around, she points at the Doctor, blah, 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 you know, this whole sort of darkness. And then we find out at the end, no, she was pointing at the road sign. And she's not some weird, mysterious creature. She's just a teenager who couldn't have a child at that point, and thought the best thing to do, to hide it from my family, to hide it from everyone, pretend it's not happened, but not, you know, end this child's life, leave it at a church. They'll take her in, and hopefully that'll be it. You know, everyone will, or someone will look after her, and she'll live a life free of me, because I can't right now. I like that in a sense. However, again, it's not quite opposite, but almost, where it's like, oh, there's this big mystery and all will be revealed about Ruby, and this is all it is. The weirdness around it is because of Sutekh. It's not because of something in Ruby. She's not inherently mystical. She's not some weird being. She is just a human who happened to be born, or at least started her life in very peculiar circumstances. That's the entire mystery. But it means that now she has a family, a biological family that she's now reconnected with. She can move on and heal and spend some time with them. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, isn't she meant to be in season 2 a bit? And Russell has said this isn't the end. We do see her. She will come back. Joy to the World is the Christmas special. I believe she'll be in that. And there'll be more of her. So there will be a crossover time where we have 2 companions. It's not the end of her story. There is still some mysteries perhaps with the family to explore. But overall, this season has been fine. There's been some up moments, there's been some down moments, there's been some heavy-handed messaging, there's been some subtle messaging. There's been some great resolutions, there's been some RTD hand-waving. Basically, it's like any show. There's ups and downs, and I've said for quite a while now, I hate this idea of everything has to be amazing or terrible. Space Babies isn't terrible, it's just not great. As it is, or as a Doctor Who thing. On both of those, it does not really hit all cylinders. But it doesn't mean it's the worst thing I've ever seen. We all know probably what that is. Go back into my history, you'll probably find it in 3 seconds of looking. But overall, this was great. I will say that. Again, Miller Gibson really rose to to that level of being a good Doctor Who companion. She hit everything she needed to, and considering she's still that young, I'm just not jealous, but it's frustrating that some people have that ability. Ncuti Gatwa, I've loved in Sex Education. I knew that when he was announced, there was probably going to be people like, oh god, no, you can't have Eric from Sex Education. What's he going to do? I go, oh, Otis every 5 minutes. I was making those jokes myself, but in the positive sense, like, oh yeah, I'd love to hear the Doctor being Otis. But still, I knew that he could probably do it, and he still surprised me. Some of the guest characters, some of the returns of stuff like Stephen Moffat, hopefully we'll see more of his writing. There's a lot of stuff here that was good. There's some of the negatives, but I think they're definitely outweighed by the positives. And again, this is the first lot, so it's only likely to get better from here. Every Doctor has a rough start, pretty much without fail. I can't think of any that haven't had the first few episodes be a bit, okay, what is this Doctor? How do we write him? How do we do this? But now, I think the feet have been found. As long as we can get away from convenient resolutions, I'm very looking forward to what's coming down the line. But yeah, this has been me talking for probably the better part of 20 minutes. I'm not looking at the time at all. But yeah, wrapping up, I enjoyed it. and I'm looking forward to the future. So thank you very much for letting me talk about this, and until next time, as always, take care.